What's going on?
Good. How are you?
What does your shirt say?
It says, well-behaved women rarely make history.
Are you drinking?
I mean, yeah, like I got this guy over here.
What is that?
It is a wine thing.
Unbelievable.
What are you drinking?
What are you?
What? Why?
I don't know.
You know, it's been PBR and wine spritzers like for the last 2 weeks. So
I respect you.
I don't know. Cheers.
So not a lot of people know this. Tell them who you are real quick before I get. No, let me start. I had a thing I wanted to say. The Filipino burlesque fire breather. What am I? Fire breather. What do they call you guys?
So what I could do is I could give you my stage name and my taglines.
Let's do this.
And what I specialize in.
All right, let's go. Let's hear this whole thing.
So my stage name is Kitty Kamikaze. I specialize in flow art, fire art, and burlesque. My taglines are the Feisty Filipina Feline from Northeast Florida, having fun with all 9 lives. So those are the taglines that I use when I get on stage.
That's crazy. So,
why is that crazy?
Because I know nothing of this world. That's my ex-mother-in-law once had. She had a hotel she purchased in Ormond Beach, and she had a Hawaiian themed party for me. It was a surprise. It was unbelievable, and all these people came. They were doing the Hawaiian dancing and all that, and then they were doing the fire as well, along with all those other things, which was amazing. I thought, especially the fire aspect of that. What you do, let's start from the beginning. Let's just go to that. How do you master that? The only people I know that does that was Gene Simmons from Kiss, let's just say, right? And then it goes to someone like you. How dangerous is it? How do you learn that? How did you even come to be that?
So to be fair, I haven't fire performed in any capacity in the last 3 years. I've been focusing mostly on burlesque. As far as fire performing goes, I feel like a lot of performers go the opposite route. Like they'll start in burlesque and then they'll add the, bells and whistles like fire. I started backwards as a fire performer, working with other burlesque troupes and adding that element to their shows as part of a fire troupe. And it really just begins when you know someone who is a fire performer. You get curious, you ask like, hey, what's that like? I've never heard of this. And then next thing you know, you're playing with tennis balls in socks and learning how to spin before you even light up.
Right, because there's a lot more than just obviously breathing it, right? You're doing a whole performance. In your case, you do all the spinning, rotation, I mean, all that type of stuff. Right.
There's a lot of props that can be used. Like I started with poi, which is very central to like the Hawaiian culture in New Zealand. So that's what they're well known for as far as fire performing. There's fire swords, there's fire staffs, there's fire fans, there's just about anything you can think of to put on fire, you can.
Of course.
So, yeah. But I started doing, I started with fans and poi, just being out in the middle of the street downtown Jacksonville safely, of course, with a couple other people. And then it evolved into making it performance art. Like, how do we choreograph something with this with more than one person? How do we add a story element to it?
Of course.
So that's where that evolved.
Gotcha. And when obviously how many times have you been injured? I'm sure there's numerous, but how has it ever gotten really serious with that? I mean, your clothes being set on fire, your hair, any of those type of things?
Believe it or not, I will say not yet, because there's always that element of fear. But someone told me a very long time ago that if you respect the fire will respect you.
Right.
So I have more burns on my arms from curling irons and baking cookies. Like I maybe have singed my hair once.
Sure.
But it's something that you have to take seriously. As far as I'm concerned, it should require insurance, which every time I performed, we've been insured through a specialty insurance company that also covers stuff like hypnotists, magicians, stuff like that. But yeah, like I've never yet hurt myself to any really serious capacity.
That's amazing.
But it requires a lot of trust. It requires a lot of research before you even think about setting anything on fire.
Yeah, no, I've grown up in nightclub business and all that, where they put the alcohol in the mouth, they spit it out, and it turns, that image. Does that internally burn their throat? Like I've heard stories that by doing that, it can affect, the fires in your mouth or it's going down.
Right.
How does that, how do you protect yourself from, and that's what you're doing too, besides performing with the fire. You do, but yours looks much more, from the photos I saw, much more extreme.
Right.
Right. That's
so there's a lot of literature out there to learn how to protect yourself with it, learning what kind of alcohol to use, what kind of oil to use, what kind of fuel to use to not injure yourself too much, because of course you will get hurt if you continue to do it too much. Okay. Like, let me put it to you this way, you will never see an old fire breather. Like, I'm pretty sure Gene Simmons isn't doing too great health-wise with as many years as he's been doing that. So, but it's something like fire breathing is probably one of the more dangerous things that you could do, because you're ingesting something in order to bring out fire.
Of course.
So that I would say, like, I probably did that maybe 2 or 3 times out of the 3 years that I was regularly performing fire.
Gotcha.
Because it's dangerous. You don't see old fire breathers for that reason.
Right. So you limited your performance for that reason, but what are you putting in your mouth, for instance? Is it just alcohol, like alcohol we can buy, or is it a certain type of formula? Because that I always wondered.
I would prefer not to disclose that information, only because the last thing I wanted to no, because seriously, you don't want anyone at home trying something stupid.
I got you. You don't got to tell me that. I get it.
Yeah, because we've seen that happen.
Like,
we've still, in passing, oh yeah, we use X or Z, and next thing you know, there's some idiot online that's like, oh yeah, so I learned how to do this today. And then it's like, well, who taught him that?
You still have to be a unique figure, being able to do burlesque and what you're doing. Because I was actually not too long ago at a burlesque show, a private showing we had. Our company, we went to a convention in Tennessee. So it was a beautiful, historic type bar. And then they brought in a few women that did the burlesque show. And it was strictly burlesque. Very, it was great. I met one lady there, a tall girl. She was, she even made her own bullets. She was hysterical.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it's very, it seems like anyone I've ever met in burlesque is a very unique individual. I mean, and for you to do both of those, I mean, to do burlesque is, that you got to learn that as well. That's very unique in itself. And then for you to incorporate that, there's how many of you, I mean, is that just something you kind of came up with, like we said, or is it?
No. So I predominantly do burlesque now because I'm not insured as a fire performer. But, there are performers who do both. And it's a very interesting, unique market in Florida in general, because you do have those performers that will regularly do fire and burlesque, or there's so many different genres of burlesque that you can go to any city in Florida and see a completely different show.
Sure.
So I feel like in general, what I'm doing isn't necessarily unique. What makes what I do unique is that there's not a huge, as far as I've seen, at least in our area, like people of color who specialize in both, or even just people of color in general, like especially Asian women that are out there putting themselves out there and just saying, hey, you can do it too.
Right. So started, go ahead, my dear. Go ahead. What'd you say?
No. Go ahead.
As you said, you started off then, like you said, reversal. Usually it went burlesque, then fire. You went fire burlesque, right?
Right.
And I mean, let's just go to the beginning here. How do most women build up the confidence to end up even doing burlesque? Is it, I'm not kidding, is it strippers that get involved with that? Or is it people that love to dance? Or is it just all different types of people that just love that, I guess, that art form? How do you, I know there's groups. How does that even
Yeah.
begin with women a lot of times that you end up in that niche market, I guess, is what I'm saying.
So it's interesting enough because I feel like, at least in the Florida market, it's a very inclusive environment. So you have people who are sex workers who transition into doing burlesque
Okay.
because they enjoy dancing and they want a different way to make their coin.
Absolutely.
Or you have people like me who, you know, when I first started was working a 9 to 5. It was like, you know what, why not? I missed the stage. Let me go back to performing.
Okay, yeah.
It's really interesting to see the variety of performers. Like, there's people who have worked in cruise industry and in circus industry who want to incorporate what they've learned on their end, like trapeze, silks, stuff like that, into the burlesque art form. So it's one of those things, like, you just go to a few shows, you network with a few producers, you volunteer to help out with these shows, and eventually, you know, you may have an opportunity to either audition or apply. So that's how I got started. Was, you know, I took about a 3-year hiatus before I went back on stage, and I had an opportunity to do something. So I did LED props and burlesque because, yeah, so that's another option too, LED instead of fire, because you don't have to worry about fighting with the venue.
Sure, of course.
About whether or not you can do dangerous things too.
Yeah, of course, insurance, all that. Right.
Yeah.
And
So it's a
safety. I mean, some people, right.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting, very inclusive market in Florida. Like, you have boylesque, you have non-binary or LGBT friendly burlesquers who are just putting themselves out there. You see couples a lot that go to these and it's like, great, you know, that's awesome. I love that you both enjoy the show. Now go home and practice making babies. You feel turned on now. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's a really interesting dynamic, at least here in Florida. I can't speak for anywhere else.
Right. And you've only done it in Florida, right? You've never done a traveling or a troupe or whatever.
I've traveled within Florida, but I haven't traveled outside yet. That's one of the, like, few years down the road plan, maybe do some festivals out of state and go from there.
Now, what I've realized too with a lot of burlesque that I've seen over the years, not just that, each one of you has your own type of way of dancing and kind of expressing your art, obviously. And then there's also, then you get into groups and you do routines as well. Right. Which is quite interesting to me. So did you design your own dancing or your own performing, self-performing? Did you just do that to express how you feel? Or is there a certain way that you study to master burlesque in general from the historical kind of aspect of it, right? Because it forms from the past. And
right.
How did that whole thing start? And how did it end up almost? I get, it's very interesting to me because even the way you guys all dress is different as well, right? We all know, right? So that's the whole thing is like you become, I'm not going to say, you create your own image of that, right? Through the past. Is that how that works?
I mean, that's mostly right. Like, you know, there's a whole history of burlesque, like with a lot of the shows in the early turn of the century, last century, even going all the way back. Like, I actually ended up taking a workshop with someone who's been in the burlesque industry for a very long time. And she went over the history of burlesque with us. There was a lot of things that I didn't know that I felt really naive about. Going up on stage, not knowing who these performers were and what, you know, they've paved the way for a lot of us to do what we do. But it's the art of the tease. It's, you know, like, I'm not a trained dancer.
No.
At all.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's been a way to express, like, okay, so there's a theme that we have for a show. Do you think you could come up with something? And it's a way for me to channel my creativity and to look to classic burlesque moves to bring it into something a little more modern, like whether it's adding props like LED or fire or something like that.
Right, right.
Because I feel like a lot of the time it's been, like if I were to classify what I do, it teeters on neo-burlesque, which is more the revival in the last probably 10, 15 years with a lot of performers in the market, or it's nerdlesque. Like I do a lot of geeky stuff. So
Right.
yeah.
When I think of burlesque, so did that kind of, I don't know when it originated, was that kind of like the 1920s, the Al Capone era, and were they prostitutes back then? I know you guys are just performing, right?
Right.
It's like, but what was the history of actually somebody who did that back then? Because that had to be absolutely off the chart as far as,
So
for that time frame.
it's interesting because if you actually look up the definition of burlesque, like on dictionary.com,
Right.
it's a parody. And a lot of the parodies started off way, way early before even the Al Capone era.
Gotcha.
Like I'm talking, probably close to around Shakespearean times.
Oh, shit. Wow.
Yeah. So there's was
that.
it called burlesque then? Not necessarily.
Right.
But it's that teasing art form. And
Sure.
then of course with prohibition and everything else that happened much later and cracking down, blue laws, all of that, it was like, how do you get around that with these, women who are taking off their clothes? Like, okay, well, if I wear pasties, I'm not doing anything wrong because I'm not totally naked. So
Correct.
That's kind of where that comes from.
Right.
So,
And besides just making maybe individual, I guess like turning somebody on individually, they made it into a performance, obviously, right? It went from, I always wondered if it came from the Wild Wild West, hypothetically, where they would go to the saloon and they would be, I didn't know if there were certain rooms they would go into or they would dance on the bar, hypothetically. I don't know the Wild Wild West or whatever, but I just thought.
Right. I think
didn't know
a little bit of everything. I think you can and don't necessarily quote me on this. I'm going to be very honest. My burlesque history isn't that strong, but it's a lot of that too. Like if you walk into a saloon and you see, a girl with her chest out, okay, well, stop right there, miss. You can't do that. Okay, well, I'm going to get around it by doing this. And it's very interesting too, because even city to city, state to state, there are different rules on what you can show.
Right.
So
like when I was in Tennessee. Yeah, when I was in Tennessee, it was more country driven. When I've seen it in Florida, it was a whole different type of thing. Then you go to Chicago, it's a whole different type of, I guess it's just like anything else, right? There's rules and regulations as well.
Yep.
That is so interesting. And let me ask you this, because you don't have to answer it because it's maybe a little personal. So you went through a lot of different things regarding anxiety maybe and things in that nature, right? Or maybe.
Yeah.
How did you cross over to something to that level of a burlesque? Because it's, I grew up with a lot of, my father used to cast, or we used to hire talent for comedians. And then when I was making my films, a lot of actors, comedians, they're very introverted. A lot of them are very quiet, shy. But then when it came to performing, it was like a huge expression of who they are. And it almost like was a switch. Do you think, how did that work for you? Because for somebody who's very shy maybe or going through anxiety, then to go and do burlesque is a huge How did you do that transition? That's what kind of always amazed me.
So I think this sounds funny, but I kind of tie it back to my stage name. Kitty is me amplified. She's everything that I want to be in everyday life. So I get to play pretend for 3 to 5 minutes to get that out of my system.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I look at it sometimes. Like, even because there's a lot of anxiety to creating acts, creating costumes, everything that goes along with it, even just trying to get up on stage. But, I feel like the burlesque support system is really strong.
Absolutely.
We all look out for each other, and you'd be surprised. Like a lot of us are, we're anxious, we struggle, we have our own anxieties about everything, but it's like that group, building each other up, like, okay, all right, you're going to do great. Kill it, break a lash, get up on stage. That it's like, you're in your own world for 3 to 5 minutes and you like all of that's forgotten. So
Is it like
for
a
me
release
too,
of like
it
it's a
is.
release, right?
It's very cathartic. It's very
Yeah,
cathartic, because it's a lot of like, when you think about it, a lot of us we're our own producers, we're our own, we do our own social media, we do our own costuming, we choreograph,
absolutely.
like we do the whole thing. And, for a while you kind of drive on that high, but then you'll get that anxiety kick.
Sure.
But then the adrenaline of being on stage just makes it all worth it. So.
I believe it. I grew up going to my father actually had a go-go club, which is quite interesting, right? I mean, it's very
Mm-hmm.
similar back in the 70s, especially early 70s. Go-go clubs and burlesque were almost like it was very similar. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up my father went in the vending business, and I was collecting money in and out of a lot of gentlemen's clubs, which had full nudity, topless, and many things in between. And
Mm-hmm.
I people sometimes would frown upon strippers or whatever the case may be, but I used to
Yeah,
think in my head, do you know how hard it is to just get up and dance and do what you're doing and
exactly.
performing, not put all the bullshit aside. And that is unbelievable to me. And even what you maybe go through on social media too, and you may see it, you have a lot of people that are behind you, and then people may be saying something embarrassing or whatever people are making faces, or even when you're performing,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure, right? Some people are very excited to see it, some people may be like, what are you doing, whatever the case may
Right.
be. That takes a lot of confidence, I guess you could say. And I'm amazed at that, because I don't think most people can do that, especially what you're doing. And I'm not just saying that to say that. That's unbelievable what you guys do a lot of times. I mean, that's deserves a lot of credit, I think, because I don't think people realize the level of it has so many things wrapped up to one. Can you imagine most
Mm-hmm.
men getting up and dressing a certain way and dancing? We couldn't handle that. I'm just saying, most women in general. So you
Mm-hmm.
can easily frown upon certain things as it being over the top or not appropriate or all these things. But it's just something, I think, sometimes from an art form, or from what I've realized a lot of times, it's just
Mm-hmm.
unique. But it takes so much for you or anyone to do that. Not just saying that. That's amazing, I think, sometimes.
It's crazy. Like, there are, like, when I say that there's a variety of acts and you can go to any different show at any given time and see something different,
Yeah,
everyone brings their own individual flavor to what they do, and their creativity and
exactly.
their need to just have that release. Sometimes it's amazing what people will come up with,
Yeah,
and I think that's why I love to do it. It's one way for me to challenge myself to, okay,
absolutely.
I did this one time. How the hell am I going to top that?
Yeah, sure.
Like, what else can I offer? Like, how do we make this more interesting? What could I do that's different from, what another performer's doing? So it's a lot of different, it's a big old layer cake full of, glitter and tulle. It's just a very interesting, very inclusive art form. Like, we have boylesque, like I was saying, there's draglesque is the thing now. Like, you have drag
What is
queens
that?
coming up there.
Can you break down what your real quickly, like what's the
Yeah,
difference between this and that, so they know what you're talking
yeah,
about?
yeah.
Let's do
So
that. Let me hear that.
neo-burlesque is kind of like a hodgepodge of a little bit of everything. Classic burlesque, you know what you expect when you think burlesque, with the fancy gowns, the feather fans.
Sure.
Mostly going to be using big band or classical music. There's nerdlesque, which you dress up as a character,
Gotcha.
go on stage, create an act around that. There's boylesque, men doing burlesque.
Yeah.
There's draglesque, drag queens going up there and doing their flavor of burlesque in drag.
It's crazy.
There's a lot out there. There's I can't think of the name right now, but horror burlesque, where
Oh
it's a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit
yeah. I know
darker,
that
a
one. That's a
little bit
huge one.
darker.
Right.
Yeah. So neo-burlesque is kind of a hodgepodge of everything else. Like, if you can't really fit it into a category, or if it's a little bit of each, you could probably consider that neo-burlesque.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to express the art of the tease. So it's really interesting to see different performers all the time. But yeah.
What's your feedback from, say, people you work with, hypothetically,
Mhm.
friends, family members, all that. I'm sure you get positive and negatives regarding that, correct? I would think.
You would be incredibly surprised. I have yet to receive negative feedback from, like, my workplace is very, like, I'm not going into my, my regular workplace to go and, hey, so I do burlesque.
Sure.
But when it comes up, it's, okay, that's really cool. Invite me to a show. Or, friends, they saying like, wow, I don't know how I would be able to get up there and do that. Or like there's like, my partner is very supportive. He helps me build my props. He helps me get everything together for my shows. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Go perform. Oh, you want to sign up for that performance? All right, cool. Whatever you need, just let me know. So I haven't had a lot of, I feel like for the most part, burlesque audiences are very well behaved too, because we make it very, like, MCs will make it very clear the show, like, hey, it takes a lot of guts to come up here.
Sure. It's
a very, these folks work really hard for their money, so go out there and support them, but, give them cash, whatever. So it's a very welcoming environment, at least from what I've experienced.
Sure.
Every once in a while you get that drunk jackass that's like, you're too fat to be on stage, but then it's like, all right, go home.
Right. Does that affect you?
It's very, very rare.
Yeah.
Very rare.
Does anybody ever put $1 or $5 or $20 in your ass or anything, like, for fun? Like,
oh no. Okay, so we're gonna talk food laws for a second. I'm serious.
Tell me what happens with that. Does anybody ever get smashed? Do they think you're a stripper or what? Anything like go that route?
So technically, from my understanding, in the state of Florida, you can't do that.
Right.
If you're, so we have a tip bucket. I know.
You got a tip bucket?
It's a silly question, but I'm serious.
No, I'm serious too, because this is stuff I saw as well. So I wanted to kind of bring it up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you, like, you could get a tip bucket, or, in this day and age, there's ways to digitally tip the performers.
Sure.
Go through their Venmo, Cash App, all of that. But yeah, like, no one's tried to go up on stage or try to slip cash down a thong or anything like that.
Right.
Like, again, every MC is really good about setting ground rules, like, clap, have fun, tip your performers, don't touch them. And again, for the most part, they'll behave.
I wanted to ask you this. So you're a Navy brat, obviously, right? Like your two sisters. And but you were very fortunate to live in another country, right? Do you think that had anything, like, from a cultural standpoint, you got to truly, where did you live again? I don't want to screw it up, I think.
So I lived in Norway for about 3 years.
Right.
But I got to travel throughout Europe and within those 3 years. So everywhere, like Russia, Germany, Czechoslovakia, when it was Czechoslovakia, stuff like that, Finland, Sweden. So when I was younger, I was able to do a lot of traveling.
Do you think that you think a lot of, just being introduced to so many different cultures, that had anything to do with interesting, do they do burlesque, for instance? And did you transfer, like, do you bring any of that to your show or your performance as well?
I feel like more so the openness of being in somewhere like Europe, because in Norway, I feel like it was like every beach was a nude beach.
Exactly.
They did not shy away from the human body. They, sex was out in the open. Like, you had, like, I remember buying candy as a kid, and there's a cow with like 8 udders out, and she's, lactating, and it's a very sexualized thing, and it's on a kid's candy pack. So it's very, I think what I'm trying to say is that openness.
Sure. That's my point.
Yeah. Like, very
right.
open.
And that was my point. Like, you kind of transition.
Okay, so exactly. Like, it wasn't, like, it's not taboo. What I'm doing isn't wrong. I'm celebrating my body and encouraging others to celebrate theirs too. This is the way I choose to do it. So yeah, I think that my growing up in Europe was very instrumental in being exposed to different art forms and to being okay with, okay, well, people are just going to have their bits hanging out. That's cool. nothing to be ashamed of.
Right. And television, as you know, film or any of that stuff, it's just
Yeah,
out in the open.
exactly.
And then what's interesting about you is when people find out what your degree is, let's say, for instance, because sometimes people just think you say you're burlesque or whatever you're doing. People don't realize your educational background and what you your degrees in, which is, you wouldn't expect that. So tell people what your degree is versus.
So I majored in communication. So I have a BS in communication and a minor in English.
Yeah. So that's got to probably be pretty shocking when people kind of hear that, because it seems kind of a little different, right?
It's a little different, but again, a lot of these performers, if they're not doing this, and it's very rare that you'll find a full-time performer.
Sure.
Like every job that you can imagine.
Right. Everybody from everywhere.
Every background, every single background.
Nice.
So it's really, but it's all interesting because we all have our journey of how we got to this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, like every walk of life, you would be very surprised. Like you could be talking to someone at Publix and you just see them at a show later. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
you have no idea.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So what do you think the future is here with this burlesque, and maybe with the, like even going through the coronavirus situation or any of these types of things? What do you think is going to happen with just performing in general for people like independents like you? Not, we all get Disney's going to have performers, Universal, commercialized, but someone like yourself, do you think there's going to be enough money, or they're going to still do it? Or how do you?
We've had to adapt. There are a lot of people out there who are figuring out ways to do this as a live stream. Like I've been already.
I was going to say, is it going to go on the internet or something like that?
Yeah, and like figuring out ways to make sure people are 18 and older, and figuring out ways to pay the performers for their time and for their talent. So I think there's going to be more options to live stream. There's going to be more of an openness to send tips through applications like Cash App and Venmo.
Interesting.
Yeah, and because sometimes you'll be in a city and there'll be 3 shows going on. Like, how do you go to all of them?
Yeah.
So having the option to live stream is a really good one, because you could just sit at home and just kind of filter between tabs and support the performers. So I feel like there's going to be a lot more of that now. A lot of us are struggling in general, but I know a lot of performers who are like, maybe having to go to other means, like, OnlyFans, to set up something private for people that, really want to invest in what they're doing, or it's interesting. Like we're just having to adapt just like everybody else with this coronavirus going on. But whenever this is over, I feel like people are realizing how much they rely on arts to get them through some hard times.
Yeah.
So, I think when people are going to be able to order a drink at the bar and watch people shake it on stage, they're going to be front center and like, let's go. I'm ready to see this again. And it's going to come back.
Yeah. And maybe people like, independent bars that I've been involved with my entire life, or whatever the case may be, maybe, when people are there, they'll appreciate somebody like yourself a little more, because when you have something taken away from you, like, right, like something that you do that is unique, we can all take things for granted. But when you actually now go to, if a bar hires you guys, because it would seem like a lot of independents I know hire burlesque. It's not corporate type venue always.
Very rarely.
Right. So, and I also think from your point of view, like a lot of artists, let's just say, now that you have some downtime, can also help you master your craft a little bit better. Because I think a lot of us are so busy with work, right? With maybe working out, raising children, whatever the case may be. You really didn't have that extra time to focus in on maybe changing some things up, creating some new material, mastering different techniques. So on the other end, when people, I think, or when this ends, people are going to be a lot more advanced, I think, or maybe just just more creative, I guess you could say, or
more creative and more prepared.
Yeah, that's
in regards to coming back to the stage. It's like I've been doing that. Like I've been playing with my pro props a little bit more. I've been writing stuff down, like, okay, what act do I want to do? How am I going to go about it? What am I going to, like, just planning a little bit more, because there are times where I'll do, I think the most shows I've done in a month is 5, and I work a salaried job where 40 hours isn't just 40 hours. So having to invest that time on top of my regular work, having to try to do that, like, I feel like I'm going to be more prepared and committed and able to be better. So yeah, that's a really good point too.
Yeah, and you're not as tired. Like I've been doing podcasts, right? Even working out, like I've been saying, either you're going to get in better shape through this, even if if you can't get to a gym, but you're either going to start studying and seeing what worked and didn't work for you, but you're either going to get in better shape or worse shape, right? But like in your case, you work very hard, right, throughout the week. And then if you're taking care of your dogs or whatever else you're doing, you're tired a lot of times, even when you're rehearsing or those type of things, where now you're kind of fresh as a daisy. Because tomorrow, most likely, a lot of times you don't have much more to do. So and you can do it when you have the most, I guess you could say, energy too. Because a lot of times we use most of our energy for work. And then you're either too early in the morning or late at night. In this case, you could be like, hey, I'm going to do this at 2 in the afternoon when I feel the best, or 4 in the afternoon, or whatever the case may be, which I think is a benefit, for a lot of performers, not just you. And I think it gave a lot of people time, even including me, to, if I'm working on whatever I'm working on, to do it with a free, clear mind that I haven't had in forever, right? Like our mind is like clear.
Being able to, like, I'll do dishes, probably going to take a nap. All right, cool. I'm ready to work on this. Right. Like, just having that option to make my own schedule has been so beautiful and freeing. My shoulders don't feel as tense. Yeah. It's been nice to be able to put energy into something that I'm not necessarily required to.
That makes sense. Yeah. And you have the freedom too when you want to research whatever you want to research, which a lot of people don't realize that. You can use a lot of a lot of time beneficial. I mean, it could be huge for you to start looking on YouTube or wherever you want to look at, or trying different things or experimenting, but also learning, I guess you could say, with somebody like yourself, or maybe you didn't have the time to do that. You kind of get caught in a rut doing the same type of routine or same type of thing over and over again. But now you have the opportunity to read about it, watch it, whatever the case, communicate with your friends, either on Zoom or wherever, like it's kind of more of a camaraderie. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Camaraderie.
Camaraderie, yeah. Like it can also become a social type thing, right? Where you and your friends talk and
that's the thing that's been happening too. Like, a lot, like I haven't been able to get on a call yet, but I've been able to see everybody, like all the Sparkle folks, just, hey, we're having happy hour at 8:00. Yeah. We don't have to talk shop. We just miss seeing everybody, miss seeing your shows. So it's, like I said, the Sparkle blood runs thick. So everybody's been trying to keep up with each other and trying to get people, to see the brighter side of things. Like, yes, this is absolutely terrible for everybody right now, but to be able to, go in there and just research, as you said, or spend time on projects that aren't necessarily for shows that you're doing, like that's been nice. Yeah. Like not the, oh shit, I forgot I need to get more rhinestones. I need to bedazzle something. Oh God, the show's in 2 days. Right. Stuff like that. So it's been nice to have that time for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even communicating with one another now has just been wonderful for me. I try so much I can never do my podcast, right? And I'm not saying this. And then I was the problem. And everything I couldn't do something for this week, that week. Now, everybody seems to have so much more time. And not only am I doing the podcast where we have time, we're kind of all relaxed, not exhausted, like I was saying. And it's like we do it at the times we all fit that will work. Like that kind of makes sense, like for both of us. Not like, hey, I'm traveling, I got to catch a plane. I'm only good at 9 p.m. Well, dude, I get up at 6 in the morning. And then I could tell when I'm going through it with them, they're exhausted. Or whatever the case may be, it's been kind of a wonderful time to be able to speak to everyone, and we're all kind of in different spirits too. Even though it's down, it's kind of refreshing. It's kind of a weird thing we're going through, I think.
It's a very strange thing. Like, I've had my tears about things happening. You know, I've been upset, I've been anxious, I've been worried.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, you know, it's really nice if I want to sleep until 10, I'm going to sleep until 10.
Right.
Or if I'm, you know, like just having that freedom to choose how I value my time.
Right.
And downtime's been a huge part of that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't have to be anywhere. I don't have to, you know, work on anything right now. I could just make myself some tea and sit on the couch and do nothing. This is great.
Sometimes
you know what I mean?
You forget who you are sometimes, right? I think a lot of us forgot who we were, and now we're kind of like, wait a minute, I enjoy doing this, or I forgot I like doing
enjoy making a cup of tea and doing nothing. Who knew?
I never talk on the phone to anyone usually, except if it's maybe work related. Rhea, my daughters, my mother and father. But now I've been doing podcasts or communicating again with everybody. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't done this in years. And it's so wonderful to reach out to friends, regardless if it's a podcast or just on Facebook. We're all messaging each other more.
Right.
And I like that aspect of it. So
yeah, and I feel like that's something that we need to continue to do. Like, you know, something that I've been trying to do is reach out to maybe 2 or 3 people that I haven't seen or don't regularly get in touch with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wouldn't that be nice if we just continued doing that more? Because every time you talk to someone, and this is something that Rhea even mentioned, she's like, yeah, everyone's so excited to hear from someone else.
Yeah.
It's great.
It is
and
great.
It's something that you didn't know that you needed to appreciate, because you always have this naive ideation that, hey, everyone's going to be there, or I'll see you when I see you. How many times have you said that? And
absolutely
not having that option. So yeah, it's changed a lot of ways we have to do things, for sure.
No doubt. I'm going to wrap it up with this. Your man is an obsessed Star Wars fanatic.
Yes.
Right? Wouldn't you say?
Yes. 100%.
Right. How is dealing with somebody to that level who's obsessed with Star Wars? Because I have a friend, Ed Sanchez. He's a director from the Blair Witch. I think he collects more memorabilia or things in general regarding Star Wars than many people in the world. I mean, he's one of the top collectors. But I know Tevis, he's obsessed with Star Wars as well. How does that work as far as the dynamic of the way how is it to live with someone like that? He's a collector. His whole lifestyle seems to be a lot like he loves graphic novels, comics. I know there's a lot of guys out there, but he seems really on a much higher level. Am I wrong that he loves those type of things? And
he knows what he's about, you know, and I think that's just something that's in his character. Like he grew up with the series, you know, as a kid in the 70s, early 80s. So this is something that's been with him for many, many years. And as far as being with someone like that, he just, you know, he's never tried to be like, hey, I need you to watch this, or no, we're going to watch this, or trying to make me into the big super fan that he is. But, you know, he knows what he's about and he loves what he loves. And when I told him that I was doing a Cara Dune Mandalorian act, he got so excited. He helped me build the foam. He helped me pick out the right colors.
That's awesome.
You know, so it's become, the more nerdlesque that I do, the more it becomes a partnership and using his geeky knowledge to help me make my acts better.
And he's deep with that knowledge. Not only there with the whole comic book, I mean, not only DC, Marvel, he's all over. I mean, he's very brilliant with any of that. I mean,
he loves just science fiction and fantasy, you know, so he loves that whole, he has a gaming, you know, he does tabletop gaming too. So he's been doing that and focusing a lot on that since all of this has gone on as well. So yeah, it's, you know, it's in the same vein that I'm always interested in my own burlesque, whatever, trying to be obsessive over creating everything. Yeah. He's like that with Star Wars. And sometimes the worlds collide.
Obviously. How long you think you'll be doing this burlesque? Because I know there's all, you know, some women do it their entire lives, obviously. Do you plan on being one of those type of women, or do you think I'll call it quits at 40, 50, 60?
Oh, God, no.
You're going to do it forever? You don't care how your body can
as long as people are, as long as I'm able to get on stage, as long as people think that my ideas are worth investing in, absolutely, I'll keep doing it.
That's wonderful.
It's crazy because you would be there. What I say, there's a variety of performers out there. I'm talking like where from, like you have some of these people who've been doing it for 20, 30 years.
Right.
And they're great and they look great and they're having fun and they're a wealth of information.
It's got to be great exercise too. And it's just you know what I mean? It's fitness. It's everything. It's great balance.
It's everything.
It clears your mind.
Yeah. It's a little bit of everything. That's for sure.
All right. Do you want to tell everybody where they could find you or your website, your Insta, whatever you want? You let me, whatever.
Sure. My Twitter is at Kitty Kamikaze, at Kitty Kamikaze 1, the number 1. I'm also at Kitty Kamikaze Jax on Instagram. And
is that Jax with Jax or Jack?
Jax. Yes.
Okay.
I forget that not everybody's from Jacksonville, apparently.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up. That's all right. People who live in Florida know your angle. Go ahead.
And Kitty Kamikaze, you can find me on Facebook, my Facebook page. So I'm pretty active on social media. I post when I'll be in shows. I'm hilarious, I think, so I'll post stuff like that. But yeah, I'm pretty active on all of those channels, so check me out.
Yeah, and I wanted to also thank you. She helps me with some of my crazy. What did we do? The You Around the app? You helped me with the dialogue with, or some of the writing with my app?
I've just been your proofreader. And,
thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I owe her meals for the rest of my life. We always goof around. Sometimes I think I'm a little too rough with my verbiage around you sometimes when I say crazy shit. But I think you've gotten used to me now, I think, a little bit.
You're not rough. I'm just like, okay, so you said there's 5 different ways. We're going to narrow it down to 1.
Yes.
And it's going to be to the point and it's going to be great.
Oh, thank you so much for all that you've done with me regarding that.
Absolutely.
And so that's, I honestly, I appreciate you doing this. And I really think what you do is amazing. I know a lot of people may not believe that I believe it, but it is. I think just the confidence it takes, how much hard work it takes, what you go through to get it right. I don't think me growing up I can't say my father owned a bar and a nightclub, so we saw bands, we had comedians, and then me making film. People don't realize how much hard work it is to perform and perform right.
It's a whole investment. We are our own everything.
Yeah.
And, trying to make space for myself as an Asian woman in this industry, that's
unique in itself. Yeah, that's unique in itself. Yeah, absolutely. I sound like Jimmy Fallon saying how amazing. But what you really do some incredible things, and you deserve a lot of credit for that. And I know maybe not a lot of people tell you that, but it is time. At least I think I should tell you that, because sometimes it gets weird when you're on family and everybody and you're talking. But I have so much respect for you for what you do on every level.
Thank you.
All right, my dear, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you, and I got to get I got to get a great photo of you for the cover for my YouTube of you. I don't know if you want to do it with you breathing fire like some of the ones I've seen before. Whatever you think.
I have some promo photos.
Yeah.
I have promo photos.
We're going to put that up.
You a couple for sure.
Perfect. All right, my dear. Take care and stay safe. I'll see you soon.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.